I'm going to go pick up wood and I'm going to bring it to you and Karen. So right after this, I'm going to run up there and do that real quick.
Okay.
So that I can come and then I'll find Ben and we can unload. And then when you could come outside, we'll talk trees real quick.
Cool. Do you see that at the bottom of the page?
Live transcript available?
Do you see it? Oh yeah. So do you see the words coming up?
No.
That's so weird. I just pressed a button and now it's like everything I say,
I can see it.
Typing. That's so weird. I'm going to leave it on today and see what it does.
Awesome.
That is really cool. I've never, like, there's just a new button today and I just pushed it. Like a button that hadn't been there before. Lord. That sounds awesome. Yes, it's a beautiful day too, so we actually might be able to like envision something. Although I haven't planted any of the irises yet, so you're just gonna have to like leave 3 with me or something, and
they're so hardy. Just hold on to them and plant the live ones. They're gonna come up again. We got them all over the place.
I have like, I was going to do it on Monday during my lunch break. That was my plan. I was like, that'll be a lovely thing to do. And then you remember Monday was like a torrent. So yeah, today would have been a lovely day, but instead I don't know what I did. I guess I didn't take a lunch break today. Actually, I know I didn't because here's my lunch sitting right next to me uneaten.
I ate a salad. I was like, I still have hemp seed in my teeth. So.
Right, I'm gonna start trying to do this Facebook thing. So let's see.
Okay.
This thing stresses me out every week, the Facebook. Ever since it stopped working that one time.
Mm-hmm.
Share on a page. Yes. Okay.
Be right back. I'm making a napkin. Forgot to look up one thing.
Wow. That's a big thing of sugar you got there. It's pretty exciting.
It was already in the pantry, so I figured, okay, we're gonna use this.
How many pounds is that?
I think it's 10.
Wow, that's a lot of sugar.
Yeah, I buy it. Walmart is the cheapest place to get it. Even at wholesale, I can get it cheaper. I can get it cheaper at Walmart. And I need about 100 pounds of sugar for the apiary because I feed them all winter.
Oh, that's so awesome. Okay.
Take honey and put it in there.
That's awesome. Oh, okay. I'm getting ready to put this on Facebook. Sorry, I'm gonna have a choking fit.
Okay, don't die. I need you. What is that? Is it the chair? I think
All right, I think we may be live. Let's see. We are live on Facebook, so I will now also send us out onto Zoom. All right, we are out there.
Okay, let's see if any of our Zoom kids show up today. Hello, everyone. I'm Sherilyn Berry, coming to you from the wonderful downtown ag building here at Cooperative Extension. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting food, not just for consumption, but also for the way it's changed the world over the last 500 years. But if you'd like to ask a question, we'll talk about 20 minutes about this food, and then I'll open it up for questions. So please feel free to ask questions. This is a very interesting topic, but it's something you probably eat every day. So it is sugar. So this is sugar cane. It's a bamboo. It grows in very moist and fertile ground type of places, which is why the tropics, Southern Africa, and all over South America, this grows. There's even a species of this type of bamboo, this sweet bamboo, that used to grow actually in the Southern United States, all the way up to North Carolina. So very, very interesting. And this, as much as we think of sugar as, kind of an innocuous ingredient, or that some people think it's bad and evil because it's, making Americans obese. It has a really deep and interesting story. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. But why don't we talk a little bit about the types of sugar that you'll find. I have a few from around the world, and then I have the ones that we primarily use in the United States. So we'll talk about those. So this is sugar cane, the bamboo. And actually, I was very tempted when I went into the grocery today. There were pieces of this that were 8 feet long. And I really wanted to buy that one, but it wouldn't show up on camera as well because it's just this little box. But I was very tempted to buy the 8-foot one. So instead, I got these ones that are chopped in these little tiny pieces. So if you wanted to enjoy this and you don't have special equipment, you can splice it down the middle with a knife. And often you can find these in the grocery store in vacuum packages, and it says like raw cane sugar. So I did that, and you can see it's a grass. It's a monocot. It's a grass. And so it's like one of the largest grasses in the world. It's a type of bamboo, but it photosynthesizes these very, very simple sugars that are really delicious. So you can take this, and this is a fun thing to give to kids, because even though it's sugary, this is the most nutritious way to eat sugar because it has some vitamins and minerals. Actually, this is pretty high in folate and some other B vitamins. And folate is important for women of childbearing age. You want to have folate in your system if you're planning on having a child, because having folate in your system when a baby is forming, especially in those early days, will prevent spinal defects. So very important for people to have B vitamins in their diet, which is why a lot of our foods are enriched with B vitamins, just for for many reasons, so we don't have deficiency diseases, but especially for women of childbearing age, because a lot of people don't have any idea that they're going to get pregnant. And in those first few days, if a woman is low in folate, she can actually end up with birth defects in her baby. So anyway, this has a lot of folate in it, and it's very juicy and delicious. So this is a fun thing to give to kids and let them chew on it. The leftover fibers from this actually are used for a lot of different purposes in the places where they process sugarcane. So when they've juiced the sugarcane, the leftover fiber is called bagasse, and they'll actually use this to fuel the sugarcane factory by letting it dry out and then burning it, because it's kind of like hay almost. It's like this leftover shredded grass. So it's a biofuel. They actually burn it for that. Another thing they do is chop it up really, really fine, and it's like a substitute for Metamucil, or one of those fiber substitutes that a lot of people will use to keep themselves regular. So a lot of uses for bagasse. You can look it up. There's no reason really to waste anything that has carbon bonds in it, because you can use it for fuels, you can use it for compost, you can use it for food fillers, you can grow mushrooms on it. So this is a really useful product, kind of from seed to table. So if you've ever been on a tropical vacation and you go to a market, you can almost always find somebody squeezing these and you can get a cup of fresh squeezed sugarcane juice. And I've had it a few times in my life. And I tell you, it is one of the most delicious things. It's like liquid brown sugar. It's so good. And usually they put a little like fresh ginger and lime in it. I could drink gallons of it. It is so, so delicious. So yeah, I highly recommend it if you can get a hold of some cane juice. You can find cane juice packaged, but it's never the same as having a fresh squeezed. And it's basically this massive press that they have, and they feed this 8-foot piece of sugar cane into it. It crushes it. Sounds like a bone crusher. And you get this juice out of it, and they add the spices to it, and you can walk around. It gives you a little pep in your step too, because it is sugar. So, okay, I want to show you how the rest of the world uses sugar. They refine it, but not quite as much as we do. So what I have here is a product of Colombia called panela. And so in South America, in most places in South America, they call this panela. And it's basically like a little round of brown sugar. See if I can open it up for you. This little round of brown sugar, well, all they do is they squeeze the cane like we talked about before. See that brown sugar? It smells so good. It smells like sugar cookies. It's very good. So they squeeze the juice out, and then they just boil it down and pour it into molds and let it cool and dry. So when you boil the water off of whether it's a salty solution or a sugary solution, you super saturate it. That means that you've boiled off so much water that there's less water for the sugar to interact with. So it will spontaneously start to crystallize. And the center of the crystal is always more pure than the outer part of the crystal. And that'll come into play. We'll talk about that in a minute when we get over to the highly refined white sugars. But this is a very common way to have sugar in South America. In Mexico, this is what I grew up on. It's called piloncillo, Piloncillo. Piloncillo. There's all different kinds of brands of this. These are like $1.50 here in North Carolina. But if you're close to the border of Mexico, if you're in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, you can get these like on sale for like $5 for $1. And I actually boil this down into a syrup, or I dilute it into a syrup. And it's kind of like poor man's maple syrup. It's awesome. And it's so much cheaper than maple syrup. When you get the sugar this way, it still has a lot of its B vitamins attached. So it's a nice little sugar, and it just tastes so delicious. You can melt it in a little bit of water. You can also, when you're melting this in the water, I always put like a stick of cinnamon and some star anise and, you know, any kind of spices you like. Allspice. I like the whole seed spices because you can easily remove them. So you infuse your sugar syrup, but you don't leave like chunks of things in there. You know, no powder. You could use powders, I guess. If you were going to add vanilla to this, wait until the sugar cools down, the sugar syrup. Otherwise, you'll just burn off that flavor. So really delicious. You'll find these in you know, Nana's house in Mexico or South America, and she'll have a hammer specifically to break this thing. So yeah, it's a great sweetener. A lot of like the horchatas and things like that they make down there are sweetened with piloncillo. So, okay. Here's another one that I love. This one is a dulce de panela. It's another panela. This is a El Salvadoran product. And this is wrapped in a corn husk, but it looks exactly like this, but wrapped in a corn husk. All of these things are the same. In India, they call this jaggery. So basically all they do is cook it down to a super saturated solution, dump it in a mold and let it dry and call it a day and sell it. So that's how a lot of the other world has sugar. The way we use sugar in the US is granulated white sugar. So granulated white sugar, it's bright white. Everybody's seen this. Everybody's used it before. In order to get this sugar, they have to cook down this sugar. And what they do is when it starts to crystallize, it's not nice and neat like this. There's these kind of slurry of crystals. So they strain the crystals out and they wash them because the inside of the crystal is white and the outside of the crystal is brown. So they continue to pull the crystals out and they wash them, and that wash will go back in to keep boiling off. And in order to give it this dry consistency like this, they dry it out and then they actually blow air through it for days. Sugar is hygroscopic. That's hygroscopic. Hygroscopic. That means that it attracts moisture from the air. So that's why you get clumping in your sugar products if you leave them out. Or if I leave this out in a humid room, it'll get kind of wet and sticky on the outside, especially in the humid environment that we're in the southern US out here. So brown sugar can be made one of two ways. It can either, you can take white sugar and spray a little molasses back on it, or what happens is they refine these super white crystals, and then as they're refining them, they can't really make them any more pure, and so you get these brown crystals that are, they'll grind them so they're more even, but they don't have to dry it as deeply to make this, you know, kind of fall apart, which is why when you measure this sugar, you just pour it into a container, because the crystals naturally compact because they slide together. Whereas most recipes that you look at that call for brown sugar, they want you to pack it into the container that it's in, so that you get like, because if you just pour it in there, there's going to be all this room in there because the crystals are sticking together and leaving air spaces. So neither one of these are healthier than the other. Sugar is sugar is sugar. So let me talk about another product. Once you remove all of these white crystals and wash them, what's left over is molasses. So molasses is what makes sugar brown sugar. So this is concentrated. These are all the B vitamins and things with it. Here in the South, I did not grow up with this, but I have had it since I've been here. People make cornbread and put this on cornbread with lard or butter, and it's excellent. Don't worry about the brand. Molasses is pretty much molasses wherever you go. It's basically the concentrated B vitamins and like the sort of impurity factor from that raw cane juice. When you squeeze the raw cane juice, you can look at a picture of it. Raw cane juice is this color. And so when you boil off all the water and you remove all of the sucrose crystals, which is what sugar is sucrose, we'll talk about that in a minute, you end up with molasses. This is what people make rum out of. You can make alcohol out of any kind of sugar, anything that has carbon-carbon bonds pretty much, but especially carbohydrates, you can make alcohol out of. And this was what was traded in the triangle of trade to Europe to make rum. And we'll talk about the triangle of trade in just a little bit right after we finish our other kinds of sugars. So this is powdered sugar, and powdered sugar is also nothing but sugar, but about 2 to 5% of powdered sugar is an anti-caking agent. So they take this white sugar, this table sucrose sugar that we're used to, that we mix into our coffee in the morning, and they grind it up like 10 times finer. And since the surface area is so much greater, it actually will clump into a chunk if you don't add an anti-caking agent so that it can like shake and be fluffy. So sometimes they'll use potato starch, sometimes they'll use cornstarch. They don't use wheat starch or dextrose anymore because of gluten intolerance with people. They're also use like some other kinds of anti-caking agents. The name escapes me at this time, but they're all pretty inert. Not that many people are allergic to corn, but anybody that has any sort of grain allergy or any food allergy has to really pay attention to what's in ingredients in their food. So this is more than just table sucrose. It also has the anti-caking agent in it, but it's sugar. So this, someone asked me in the store about 10 years ago when I was walking along, they're like, oh, organic sugar, does that make it healthier? And no, it does not. This is equivalent to this. You can tell it hasn't been washed as much. This darker color, it still has some of the molasses attached. You can tell by comparison. And so people think, oh, it must be healthier because it's more natural. And, you know, technically it is. It's less refined, just barely. It is a little bit wetter. You can tell because they didn't dry it as deeply as before. But all it means is that they did not use chemical fertilizers or chemical or, you know, certain kinds of pesticides on the field where they grew the bamboo that they squeezed out of this. So it doesn't mean that it's magically, or, you know, that it's magically healthier. It just, in the big scheme of things, anything organic is pretty much going to be kinder to the earth. Not always, but generally speaking. And so people are more, you know, inclined to buy organic products, and that's great. That's fine if that works for your family, but it doesn't mean that it's would cause less cavities or weight gain, or that it has less calories. It doesn't mean that. One thing that you'll see in this brand, and again, I'm not promoting this brand, it's Whole Foods store brand, whatever. You'll find organic sugar in all kinds of places. It'll say vegan sugar. So vegan sugar, what that is it's still sugar, but in order to make white sugar like this, they'll use coal ash or primarily bone ash. So a byproduct, you know, when you eat a steak or you eat a piece of chicken, the pieces of the animal that are not connected to it right now has been used for something else, whether it's feather meal to put in a garden, bone meal to add calcium to soils, tallow for candles and soap, and, you know, degreasers and all kinds of things, grease products, I mean. Every part of the animal is used. The ideal profitable system is that the trash of one thing is the food for another thing. And so, so a lot of times they will take bone and burn it down into charcoal, and they use that to purify sugar so that it's bright white. Now, vegan sugar, they'll use something like coconut charcoal to remove impurities. Coconut charcoal is more expensive, and bone charcoal is like super available. And so that's why plain white sugar, or any of these sugars, except for the brown ones like this, are not considered vegan. So if you got a vegan in your life and they're real strict, I bet you they already know about this, and you can buy them vegan sugar at a lot of different places. So let's talk a little bit about how sugar has changed the world. So let me get my little map out. And you know that I'm good at certain things in life, people, but I am not an artist. But I had to draw this for you. So this is the triangle. Over here, we have North America, we have South America, and we have Africa and Europe, okay? So if you've ever wondered why in Haiti they speak French, and in Dominican Republic they speak Spanish, and in Brazil they speak Portuguese, it's because of sugar. I promise you, it's because of sugar. These are warm areas of the world where you can grow sugar, and down here too. But here, it's too cold. Now you can grow sugar beets, which that can be another subject. By the way, if your package doesn't say cane sugar, it's probably beet sugar, because you can grow beets in colder, darker areas and you can make sugar out of them. But that didn't come till way later. In the 13, 14, 1500s, this was Christopher Columbus's doing. And while there was some beneficial stuff out of it, like Europe and the rest of the world has tomatoes, potatoes, corn, squashes, those all came from us over here. Chocolate, that all came from this side of the world. Over here, what they did was they would first take enslaved Africans and bring them to the Americas to work the sugar plantations. And Europe wanted all this land because sugar was white gold. Yes, they sent Christopher Columbus and all those other, European explorers to go and discover new lands. Really, they were looking for gold because gold was considered very valuable. But then they found out that actually there's a lot of other products that people are going to want. Sugar was considered white gold. It was so valuable. It was considered medicine when it was first brought to Europe hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But they figured out how to grow it and process it faster and faster and more economically. And you had Europeans taking over areas, subjugating populations, importing other people from other places to grow sugar, because you could make this into a lot of other things. So enslaved Africans come to the Americas, and over here, we grew tobacco in the American South and cotton and some sugar. And so sugar went from here over to Europe, and also from here over to Europe, and all these islands over to Europe. And in Europe, they made rum and they made textiles out of the cotton, which is clothing. And so then the clothing goes to Africa because they didn't have the developed manufacturing that we did in Europe. And they didn't really have a lot of developed manufacturing quite ready here in the American South yet either. They were getting there, but really the Industrial Revolution happened earlier in Europe. And so you've got manpower, raw materials going to Europe, manufactured goods going here. Some of them went this way too, but that's Columbus's triangle. And it really was because of sugar. So, I mean, it blows my mind that this plant, this crop in particular, completely changed the world because we love sweetness. As the world, as human beings, we love sweetness. We're born for sweetness. When a baby is born, they have more sweet taste buds on their mouth than any other taste buds. They even have them on the inside of their cheeks because they're looking for the sweetness of lactose in mother's milk. And then they're also very sensitive to bitter. You know, as a baby, you don't have a lot of ways to, you're exploring your environment, but if they put something in their mouth, you get that, you know, that bitter look on their face, that because they really taste bitter, but they're really looking for sweet. And before the advent of modern sugar, the only time that you would really get anything sugary was in the summer with fruit, or if you were brave enough to get into a hive of stinging insects. And back then, in order to get honey out of a hive, they used to have to destroy the hive. That old-fashioned beehive that, you know, like the beehive hairdo is made after, it's called a skep, and it's like that little, almost like pyramid. They would grow bees in there, but in order to get the honey out, they'd have to tear it apart. And in the 1800s, Mr. Langstroth, can't remember his first name, came up with the modern beehive with the frames in it. So you could pull honey from the frame, but you could still keep the bees alive. But still, stinging insects, you had to go through a lot to get sweetness. But then there was a way that they could refine it and make it into something that was shelf stable that they could take all over the world. And it really did become the white gold that changed how, you know, worldwide commerce. And, you know, you go to, it really does blow my mind that when you go to a country and you know that the indigenous people did not speak that language, it's a European language and it's halfway across the world. And it's always usually in a warmer place, except for Canada, which there's another story about that I think the French traded the British a ton of land in America and Canada for smaller amounts of land in the Caribbean because of sugar. So yes, there's French in Canada, but you know, if someplace speaks English, the English had a sugar plantation there, or you know, they fought for sugar. If they speak French, they fought for sugar there. It's mind blowing. You know, there were a few other things like tobacco, but it was primarily sugar. So. Well, I could talk actually for another hour about this, but I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions because we just have a few more minutes. So please feel free to ask.
All right, we have one waiting for you. So it is, what's the best way to store sugar cane? My mom just bought 2 canes.
Cool. Refrigerator, just cut it, stick it in a bag and throw it in the fridge because this dries out. It's a grass. And also the longer you leave it out, it's not as sweet. So go ahead and you can actually like put this in a little bit of water to freshen it when you bring it home, hack off the end, put it in some water, let it sit for, you know, an hour or two so that it can, you know, suck up some of the water into here. And then it'll be juicier when you eat it. And then take it out of the water, put it into a paper bag. A plastic bag, tie the top, stick it in the fridge, and it'll be good for a few weeks if you keep it, you know, cold.
Awesome. Thank you. So our next question is about chewing on the sugar canes. Will that give me cavities?
Anything sugary will give you cavities, but this has a lot less sugar in it than you know, like a candy bar or something like that. Also, you can use the end to you can chew on it, and then you can actually rub your teeth. You can use it as like a little toothbrush. Licorice sticks are another great thing to use. That's nature's toothbrush. But, you know, go ahead, enjoy this. And then, you know, what happens with sugar is we have bacteria in our mouths and they consume the sugar. And then the byproduct is their byproduct is an acid that breaks down the enamel in our teeth. So go ahead, enjoy this, and then just, you know, go and brush your teeth after.
Great. All right. Another great one we have here is, can you make candy out of the canes?
You know, I've never had candied cane because you can't really eat these fibers unless they're ground really, really, really fine. You know, they already make candy out of it, kind of like this is very much like candy because it's just brown sugar. So I don't know. I mean, it would be a lot of work. You'd have to crush this and then boil out the moisture. I mean, you have to be really dedicated to that project. It might be easier to just start with this and melt it down into a syrup. And then you can like, you know, put nuts in it and make a brittle out of it. You'd have to like evaporate all the moisture out of it. If you don't have a lot of experience working like sugar work, you start with white sugar because it's pure and there's not as many impurities in here that are going to cause weird crystallization. But really like fudge making uses crystallization. If you've ever seen like Great British Bake Off and they make like these bird nests out of like liquid sugar, that's just basically taking sugar, putting a tiny bit amount of moisture just to melt the crystals, and then you boil all the water off of it, and then it gets darker and darker and it starts to caramelize, and that's sugar work. And you can just make the most beautiful things out of it. But under no circumstances ever do not do this and this. That happens to people when they first do sugar work. When you melt this, it gets to like hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit. And just to see if it's good, they'll touch it and then touch their lip. And it takes a second for a burn for you to feel it. And you'll have a huge blister on your finger and your lip. So don't do that. But it's easier if you're going to mess with sugar and work with it to do sugar work. I would start with white sugar.
Very good. All right. Another question is, have you tried ponche, which we have a correction on the spelling from the first question. So it's Ponche. We use sugar cane to make this drink with different type of fresh fruits. Ooh, that sounds good.
That sounds great. What country does that come from?
All right, Brittany, you're going to have to speak up for me. Let's see, I can unmute her. Hang on. Figure out how to do this. Bear with me. All right.
My mom's from Mexico, so she makes this. She's from Cordoba, Mexico.
Oh, cool. Because I've had like licuados and things like that, but I've never had ponche. I'm going to actually look that up. That sounds delicious with the fruits. Thank you.
And we make it every Christmas.
Oh, sounds so good. Oh,
Ooh, it does sound so good. Next week, you'll have to bring us the recipe, okay, Brittany?
Yes, Brittany. Yes.
Okay.
I would love it. Tell your mom I said hi. I'll trade her soap.
All right, we have another question. Oh, this is an interesting one. What's the difference between purple and green sugar cane?
Purple and green. So, you know, I know that sometimes you'll get some of the grasses that have, you know, different colors on them. All of the grasses can hybridize the bamboos that make sugarcane. And so it may be just a different variety or species that grows in another area. It's still going to give you sucrose. You know, this is brown when you squeeze it. If it has a little purple on the outside, you might get some of those anthocyanins in the drink if you made a drink out of it. But really at the end of the day, sucrose is the main active ingredient. Sucrose is table sugar, and it's a molecule of glucose and fructose bonded together. So you'll hear like high fructose corn syrup. That's different. That's corn. We'll talk about that on another day because that's a whole other ball of wax. But sucrose is the main molecule that we taste sweet. I mean, this is 100% sucrose right here.
Wow.
So probably no difference.
Okay.
Species, but it's still sucrose. It's still sugar.
All right, I'm going to unmute Jasmine so she can ask her question live.
Talk to me, Jasmine. I think there we go.
Oh, my question was the one about how to store the sugar cane.
Oh, yeah. Just a little fridge. It'll be good. What a fun mom. She got you a fun little treat. So good.
Yeah.
I just took a knife and like tapped it in the top, and then you hit your hand on the you know, blunt backside of the knife, and it splits right down the middle. So it's a nice little treat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank y'all all. Thanks, Sherilyn.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see you all next week for something else interesting I find in the produce department.
Great. Bye, everyone.